All right. Thank you so much. Welcome to another episode of the Love, Hope, Lyme podcast. My name is Fred Diamond. I'm the author of Love, Hope, Lyme, What Family Members, Partners, and Friends Who Love a Chronic Lyme Survivor Need to Know. I'm also the host, obviously, of the Love, Hope, Lyme podcast. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please go up, give me a 5-star review. I would greatly appreciate it. And Allie, of course, we're also on YouTube. So if you're watching on YouTube, feel free to give me a thumbs up, give a comment. We would greatly appreciate it. I'm really excited today. Oh, by the way, I also want to remind people too, my book, which I just mentioned, is available on Amazon, but I give away the PDF free to Lyme survivors. So if you'd like a copy, Allie, I've given over 1,000 copies of the book, the PDF version, for free. Reach out to me via Facebook Messenger or LinkedIn. I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn too, and I'd be happy to send it to you. And of course, if you want to buy the book, go to Amazon, or if you'd like some signed copies, reach out to me again via Facebook or LinkedIn, and I would be happy to send it to you. And I'm really excited today. I'm talking to Allie from the Tick Chicks. She's also the producer and the host of the Lyme Time podcast, which I was very fortunate to be a guest on. And Allie, in the summer of 2021, I realized that I needed to learn more about Lyme disease. And we talk about this on your podcast, but one of the ways that I learned about what Lyme survivors go through and all of the things related to Lyme and how people deal with it and how it affects not just the Lyme survivors, but their families. I found your podcast and I listened to as many episodes as I could. I lived at the time near New Jersey, and I would walk up and down the beach in Margate, New Jersey, one of my favorite places on the planet, and I'd be listening to the Lyme Time podcast. So congratulations on your success with that. And we're going to be talking about some of the things that you do for the Lyme community, but we're going to be talking specifically on 5 things that related to your recovery. And I'm very excited. You've been very what's the word, authentic, vulnerable, if you will, on your podcast about your journey. You know, you did a show recently. Again, we're recording today's show in February of 2024. If you're listening in the future, you did a show with Dr. Rawls when you went deep into your personal journey and things that you did. And we want to be talking to that. Again, my listeners are either family members and friends who have a chronic Lyme survivor in their life, but a lot of my listeners are chronic Lyme survivors who are looking for support, and they want some ideas on how to ask family and friends to be more supportive for them. So I'm really excited to get deeper on what you did, because you've been so generous with your journey to tens of thousands of people to help them along as well. So it's great to see you. Well, I just kind of introduced you, but why don't you give anything you'd like to do to embellish that? And then we'll get right into your 5 recovery topics.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And before I dive into it, I want to thank you for coming on my Lyme Time podcast. It took me back. I consider myself healed from Lyme disease, and it really took me back to the days where I needed that special someone in my life. And by the way, throughout the years, it's been different people at different times that really showed up for me. And it was just really nice to remember back and to those times. So I appreciate the work that you're doing. And I also want to just say that, yes, I'm a normal person that got Lyme disease. I was a busy mother of 3 children and married, and I had a very, very busy life at the time. And I have devoted my time and efforts to helping those get diagnosed and then helping them after diagnosis, because it took me 6 years to get a diagnosis myself. And I figured, heck, in 2024, well, this was a few years ago, but even today, it shouldn't take multiple doctors and multiple specialists and dead ends and everything else that I went through to be able to help somebody with Lyme disease. So thank you very much. And I'm excited to talk about the 5 things that helped me. And I just want to remind everybody out there that there are many different types of quote unquote Lyme disease. It depends on the tick that you were bitten by. It depends on what kinds of co-infections they were carrying at the time. It depends on your immune system at the time of infection. How strong were you? It depends on how many other major viruses and things are laying dormant in your particular body. So before I go into all of this, I want to remind everybody that no journey is the same. I'm not a doctor. I'm just here to share a little bit about my journey and what helped me.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, I've heard people who've been to dozens of doctors. When I interviewed Dr. Richard Horowitz for the Love Hope Lyme podcast, he said that someone came to him after seeing close to 100 doctors, which is just, it's just insane. And like you said too, everyone's journey is the same, which is one of the big challenges. You know, it's not like when you break an ankle, every orthopedic surgeon on the planet, from Sydney, Australia to Siberia to Sacramento, California, is going to give you an x-ray. They're going to put you in a cast or a walking boot, tell you to be careful for 6 weeks and then do 2 weeks of rehab. Almost everybody I've spoken to has gone through their own journey, but there have been some commonalities, which we're going to be focusing on today. So let's go to number one, which was your antibiotic trial. So talk a little bit about that and what that meant.
I like to tell everybody, whether you've been battling Lyme disease undiagnosed for a long time and then just recently got the diagnosis, or if you saw that tick bite 2 weeks ago or yesterday and are, you know, really trying to be proactive, to try some antibiotic use. It is one of the things that can help some people. And there are those of us that have certain chromosomes and genetic dispositions to having tick bites and recovering fully. And that includes Lyme co-infections as well. So it's always beneficial to try that round of antibiotics. Now, of course, our go-to is doxycycline. If I was bit by a tick today, I would test the tick, of course, and I would test my blood. But in the meantime, during those 2 weeks of getting those results back, I would immediately put myself on doxycycline, and I would find a doctor that would do that. So I always just say, just try it. And by the time I tried it and I knew I had Lyme disease, I was 6 years down the road. So I wasn't in the initial acute stage, but I wasn't quite through the second stage. And I always think there's 3 stages of Lyme. So I was in that in-between stage. And I did try the antibiotics. I rotated antibiotics, based on what my physician wanted to do. And I lasted about 3 months, and I was happy that I did that. And so I would encourage everybody to at least give that a go. And even if you don't believe in antibiotic use, or even if you've been told you might be too far down the road, just go ahead and try it. It will probably create a Herxheimer reaction for you initially for about 10 days. You may feel like it weakens your immune system or something like that, but you also might have a really good response from that. So that would be my first tip.
You mentioned Herxheimer reaction. What exactly is that?
A Herxheimer reaction, just in layman's terms, is when you take an antibiotic, specifically, I believe doxycycline, possibly for Lyme disease, and I don't quote me on that, but it is when a Lyme disease patient is taking antibiotics, quite often what can happen is that the die-off in the body creates a storm of toxins going through your body. And if you are not doing a really diligent job of detoxing, whether it's through sweating or just your own body's ability to rid of it, what happens is it can create this firestorm inside your body, and it can bring your symptoms back and at a higher level for a period of time. Some people it's 2 days, some people it's 10 days or a couple weeks. And most doctors will say just fight through that, because that is a sign that the antibiotic is working.
Yeah, I mean, some people I've spoken to have said that the Herxheimer reaction has been worse sometimes than the pain that they've had with Lyme disease. As a matter of fact, when my book came out in the summer of 2022, I had a whole plethora of people suggesting the next book. And someone even suggested doing a book just on the Herxheimer effect, which I don't know how I could make 150 pages out of that, but good for you on that. Number two, surrender to not chasing the bug and numbers. What does that mean?
I hit a point in once I was diagnosed, I thought, okay, great. I have a diagnosis. Whew, finally, after all of these specialists and doctors. And what I realized soon thereafter was there was not a quote unquote cure. There wasn't a pill I was going to take to get rid of everything 100%. There was no one way to go about it. And so, as my doctor told me, he goes, now that we know it's Lyme, I want to tell you it's probably not the first thing that you've had come in and attack your immune system on a deep level. And it probably won't be the last. He said a lot of my patients, Lyme disease is somewhere in the middle, and they realize they have Lyme or it's been triggered, and that's their starting point. So I realized that although I can depend on some allopathic pathways in my journey, that may not be the only way, and I can also support it holistically and by doing other things and adding that into my arsenal at the exact same time I'm treating allopathically. And I really surrendered to the fact, and I really took it in that this was going to be a marathon. And I really just sort of thought, okay, why am I driving myself crazy trying to kill the bacteria that's going on? Why don't I take it symptom by symptom and really not keep obsessing about going back to my doctors and getting my numbers and obsessing about is the bacteria load heavy? Is it the same? Is it getting any better? I really just stopped and I said, let's put that on the back burner. I will go and do my blood work once a year. And in the meantime, I'm going to do symptom control. And that's what I did. And it seemed to take the obsessiveness out of the equation that was driving me so crazy. I'm a doer,
Yeah.
I don't sit around. I was very active before this whole bug bite thing happened. And so it was frustrating me. I was like, telling the doctors, I can't believe that you're telling me I used to go to spin class 4 or 5 times a week, and now I can't even tie my shoes. What? No, this is not acceptable. Let's fix this. And it just wasn't going to be, I had to adjust my lifestyle. And when I surrendered,
Yeah.
the beauty in the ability to see some healing going on.
Yeah. No, that's really powerful. As a matter of fact, we did a show with Greg Kirk, and he wrote a book called The Gratitude Curve. And the show that we did on the Love Hope Lyme podcast was on his 6 stages of healing. And actually, I devoted a chapter in the book. And one of the most impactful moments in the healing process is what you're describing as acceptance. So, you have this disease, you didn't want it. Nobody wants it, but you had it. Now, how do you continue to have the best possible life, right? With that, I'm just kind of curious, when you were finally told for the first time, Allie, you have Lyme disease, do you remember that moment? And do you remember what your response was or your reaction was?
I was in disbelief that I live in Los Angeles. I have the wherewithal to go to any specialist that I want. I am very, very blessed in that way. I have good health insurance. I went to all the top guys. I waited months for some of those specialists to get in the door. I did hundreds of vials of blood work, and I was astonished that that wasn't one of the very first tests that they gave me. I was astonished that they didn't ask where I had been traveling prior to all these symptoms coming about. I was astonished that my own neurologist blew it off. I mean, I was just in shock. And I remember telling my doctor, I said, I wondered if it could be Lyme disease. I've wondered that for the last 3 years. But every time I went online to kind of research it, all it talked about was the ineffectiveness of the testing. So I thought that it was some voodoo, woojoo, whatever disease that wasn't really definitive and kind of out there and all of that. So I was in disbelief. I was actually, that is why I started the Tick Chicks, because I was mad. I was mad that so much money had been wasted, and my time with my kids and my family, and everything came at such a cost during those first few years. And I was mad that nobody along the way for 6 years had ever supported getting tested.
Wow. I mean, there's so many things there. I mean, I've heard that so many times. Again, we're talking today with Allie from the Tick Chicks and, of course, the Lyme Time podcast. We're talking about five major things that happened to her to help her recovery along the way. You also open your mind to alternative healing. So you talked before about using antibiotics. And, as we all know, when you get Lyme, you take 3 weeks of antibiotics and you're cured. But so many people like you didn't know they had Lyme for years, and no one, it's amazing what you just shared, your journey and some of the doctors that you trusted that you went to probably for years for a whole bunch of things that no one knew enough at that point to say, well, Allie, it's definitely Lyme disease. And there's so many things there, but, let's keep moving on here. So alternative healing. And we hear about herbals and we hear about other things. I know people who've traveled to South America. I've interviewed people who've gone, of course, to Germany for various things. Talk about how you open your mind to some alternative healing.
I just, after the moment of surrender, I just decided I'm going to open up my mind. I'm going to do each and everything that I possibly can for my symptoms, and I really focused on symptom control. I was out of control of my body. So one of the first things that I did, because I couldn't drive very well or walk very well because my nerves were going crazy, I focused on my nerve health. I could barely have sheets on my bed covering my body. It was that bad all night long. So I had the insomnia on top of it. This is initially. And what I did was I just decided, okay, this is obviously something going on with my nerves. I focused on nerve health. So I just got on Google and I said, what can I do to supplement my nerve health? My nerves are fried. They were popping under my skin, literally. And I started taking some supplements that help support that. And I first considered going to see a chiropractor.
Hmm.
And when I went in there, I had tears streaming down my face. I know a lot of people can relate to that. And I just said, help me. And I can't walk and I can't drive my car. And so I focused on symptom relief, taking it, what was the worst thing that was bothering me, and taking it from there. Some people have air hunger. I would start out with some therapies for that, which is just babesia it really affects your lungs and like a shortness of breath. If you have, let's say, cardiac, has it gone to your heart? Do you feel that? Just focus on that first. And I really went down the list of things, and I started with chiropractic. I started with some gentle movement classes. I started swimming, whatever it would be, but I started with those kind of alternative methods.
So you talk about system relief. Let's get a little bit deeper into that as well. You mentioned to me that you eliminated humidity and elevation. Why was that?
Well, there are a lot of intolerances that you get with Lyme disease, and some of them would be, altitude intolerance, heat intolerance, humidity intolerance. Your body is in a systemic free-for-all, and what happens is your body becomes super sensitive to light, to sounds, even to touch. I developed all kinds of joint pain, and it just, I was all of a sudden very sensitive to chemical smells. I had to swap out all my cleaning for, clean household cleansers that were more organic. Same with my skincare. I was reacting to SPF even in my makeup. So I was going through this huge mast cell activation. And so that led me to just eliminating certain things. And I have a whole series on my Instagram reels that talk about different intolerances, beginning with food intolerances too. And I would say to anybody that's really wanting to get on top of their symptom control with regard to food, I would say eat very, very clean and stop eating so much. We are a country of putting sauces and dressings and condiments and everything on everything. And it's a way that our society works. And it's terrible, but if you can just stop that and eat very, very clean, but also very simple whole foods and proteins, that will take away a lot of that reaction, that mast cell thing that's going on in your body.
I don't disagree with that at all. As a matter of fact, I just did a mini road trip, and every time you stop at any any interstate exit, you have 6 or 7 places that you can't go into, even if you're healthy. All these fast food places that are just horrible, and the people that go in, and the amount of soda that they sell. And I stopped at like a convenience store looking for something healthy. Maybe they have bananas. So that's interesting as well. You mentioned supplements. We talk about supplements a lot, herbals and things on those lines. Talk a little bit about that, and how is that still a big part of your daily process now that you've been, you're kind of in a good place right now, or do you still have you gone the herbal route? Talk a little bit about that as well.
Sure. Yes, absolutely. Short answer is yes. And I do my supplements according to my blood work. So once a year, I go and get my blood work, and you'll find some things are now at a normal level and some things have popped up for you. And so I do it based with my integrative medicine doctor, specifically on blood work. Herbs you can take along with your pharmaceuticals, your antibiotics. You can take herbs, kids can take herbs. Dr. Rawls has an amazing protocol, and I offer a discount on my website for the herbal protocol. Get on those as soon as possible. They might take 2 months to start getting into your system and really working and everything, but you will notice a change. Also, naturopathic medicines, tinctures. I have a naturopathic doctor, Dr. Darren Ingalls. I've done an interview with him as well, and I will add those. He knows I'm on Rawls and I take the herbals, and so he'll do some additives to that. Extreme clean eating, and also don't forget about those vitamins that your vitamin Bs are really, really key to Lyme disease, especially if you're dealing with neurological Lyme. Your body may not be processing or taking in a pill form. So you may have to, and which is what I did. I was taking all kinds of B vitamins and they weren't getting into my blood work. I was still testing very low. So I started with the shots a couple of times a month. And that's what I started. I started on IVs, vitamin IVs. I did those when I was really at my worst. I would do 1 a week, and then I would do 1 every 2 weeks, and then I would do 1 a month. And then I realized after a while I was doing good. I was feeling better, and I would just do them as needed now. I eliminated any kind of hot tubs. I eliminated massage. And I just focused on very baby steps in terms of movement. I walked around the block. That was about all I could do in the beginning. And infrared sauna, I'm a big believer in that. And it really helped me. I ended up just putting one in my garage because I found that I could do it not in an acute state. I will say sometimes it can also create a herx in the way that you wake up and you feel a little worse than you did when you were actually sitting in that beautiful sauna. But as time goes on, you will be able to learn your tolerances with that and eventually go full throttle with it daily. And NAD, I do NAD. Some people do SOT therapy.
What is it? What is NAD?
NAD is a very long word that I won't even attempt to say, but you can look it up online, NAD, and it's an intravenous therapy. It takes about 2 hours to complete. And basically it is going in and goes straight to your nerves and to your cells.
Okay.
And it's all about strengthening the wall of the cell and making and bringing in that cellular wellness and structure. And for all the reasons that I won't get into scientifically what it does inside your body, for me, it always helped with the burning, all over burning nerve pain. And it helps with other symptoms too. It is a little on the pricey side, but I find that I just do it about twice a year now, just for maintenance. And that's about $400 each time.
All right. So again, we're talking today with Allie from the Tick Chicks, the Lyme Time podcast. You've given us so many great things to talk about here. Again, I want to just acknowledge your vulnerability here and telling us all that you go through. And on your podcast, you talk about so many things as well. And also, you're very active on Instagram and other social media where you're very authentic in getting the message out there. So I just want to acknowledge you for that. Finally, I want to talk about brain retraining. And one of the most challenging parts for family members, partners, and friends is the neuroside that Lyme can affect. And, you don't necessarily understand what might be happening. And talk a little bit about that. You talk about brain retraining and some breath work, and give us some insights into things you did for that.
Okay, so brain retraining is one of my favorites because what happens is when you have Lyme disease, your symptoms may start getting better. You may start feeling a little bit of relief. And what happens is your body is still in fight or flight mode. And it can be very, very detrimental to your healing process and your completion of the healing process because your body's on edge. You walk into a room and you're completely nervous that if you get sick from any one of these people, it's going to start your symptoms all over again. You're nervous to be outside in the way that you used to enjoy the outdoors. You're nervous to do anything. And so what brain retraining really does is it allows you to tap into your vagus nerve and those fight or flight responses and retrain your brain and your body to actually accepting your surroundings, being relaxed again, getting into that state of a beautiful life, getting into your state of appreciation and gratitude, getting into the state of I am safe. And that's one of my favorite mantras that I can tell to everybody out there and to all the caretakers out there, to remind that person you're safe. Because going through Lyme disease makes you question everything. And it oftentimes will put a person into that next stage of paranoia and panic about situations. So brain retraining is very hard work. There's Annie Hopper's method, of course, which is the brain retraining, and then also our brain rewiring the brain. But there's also Primal Trust, which I find a little bit more affordable. Catherine King is one of my favorites, and we've done a podcast together, and that you can find on my website. But it's really, you have to basically immerse yourself into a class to be able to do it, because it comes in it's a very specific program. And it's important. I would recommend it to anybody who feels like they're hitting roadblocks. Doing everything right and still hitting roadblocks. And also, if you're doing everything right, also doing brain retraining and still hitting roadblocks, I would have your house thermally photographed for possible hidden mold. Yes. Because that is why some people don't make that full recovery. But just give yourself a vision of total cellular health. Give yourself a chance to see the world in a positive way again, and put mind over matter, and to just be able to turn that brain and those thoughts around to really remembering that you do have a beautiful life and you have a lot to give to this planet, and you will recover.
Yeah, I just that's a great message there. Again, I just want to acknowledge you. Again, we talked today with Ali from the Tick Chicks, the Lyme Time podcast. I'm going to ask you before I say my final thoughts. Any other places that you'd like people to go to, or anything else you want to tell us about you and what you do?
Sure. I mean, the tickchicks.com has it all. You can access anything that I do through there. I'm on Instagram at the Tick Chicks. I'm on Pinterest. I'm on Facebook. I'm on YouTube. I have a YouTube channel called the Tick Chicks, and I primarily air my podcasts there. And I have a support group for those going through Lyme. So, any caretakers out there or anybody that needs support, it's a great resource. It's peer to peer. And we have about 1,000 people on there. And that is through Facebook. And you would just type in the Tick Chicks private support group for Lyme and chronic illness, and you'll find us there. And aside from the Lyme Time podcast, I'm busy doing other projects right now on the side, and you can always hear my latest and greatest through the website. There's a sign up for a newsletter there as well.
So again, I just want to acknowledge you again for all that. I mean, there's people with Lyme, and I know you're in a good place right now, but people who can't get out of bed for weeks at a time. And you've created all these amazing things that people are taking advantage of. You continue to do them because people look to you as a resource. And like I mentioned in the beginning of the call, you've been extremely vulnerable. You've been extremely honest. You've been extremely generous with a lot of what you're giving back to the world as well. So good for you.
Thank
Kudos
you.
for you.
I have a lot of love for the caretakers in this world. I want to take a moment to tell them thank you. Thank you for supporting something you don't understand. It means a lot and will go so far to those going through this. And there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and just everybody keep their faith. And I want to thank you, Fred, I had a retreat, and Fred was generous enough to send his book along. And at my retreat, I always have spouses that come,
Mm,
and we have it every year in the fall. And the
mm.
spouses were jumping for joy over your book. And I know that there's very little out there for the caretakers. So thank you so much for your contributions as well.
Thank you. You're welcome. Once again, I want to thank Ali from the Tick Chicks and the Lime Time podcast and all the other things she just mentioned, and just acknowledge you again for the great work that you're doing. Again, this is the Love Hope Lyme podcast. My name is Fred Diamond.